Hey everybody, I'm Tammy Kiefer. I'm a licensed clinical social worker.
And my name's Desiree Grimaldi. Welcome to Unguarded Minds podcast, where we talk about all the drama, trauma, and gritty things that life throws at you. Today we have a special guest, Laura. She is a vibrant speaker, mindset coach, and host of the Gutsy Podcast, a top 100 podcast. She teaches people how to quit settling and start radiating by shifting their mind junk through her activating speeches. Laura helps audiences stop overthinking and overcomplicating their next move and allowing them to get what they truly want. Welcome, Laura. We're so happy to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So mind junk. Where would you start? I want to start with mind junk.
We all have all of that.
That, my friend, is why one of the primary reasons that I do what I do. Listen, the number one thing that stops people from moving forward in any capacity in life, it's not time, it's not money, it's not resources, it's not connections. I'm not saying it's not, those things don't have an influence. I'm saying the number one thing that stops them are the conversations that they're having in their mind silently with themselves. And it's the thoughts, it's the beliefs, it's the expectations, it's the shoulds, it's life experiences, and what's society doing, and what does my family want me to do, and what is my job expecting me to do, and just all this stuff. It gets in your brain. And I call it mind junk, but in true form, I call it mind fuckery. That just depends on the PG level of what people prefer. But it's the conversations that we have that tend to stop us from doing the things that we really want to do.
100%.
Yeah. So obviously you struggled with that first, and then you were like, oh my God, I got to figure this out. Is that what happened?
Yeah. You know, there's a saying that we teach what we most need to learn. And so I have most certainly gone down and still work with the mind junk, right? Like I think a myth that I want to bust is that, you know, going through a healing journey or self-development journey or, you know, working on personal development stuff, it's not about achieving a level where it never affects you anymore. It's about being better equipped to handle it when it does come up. So I'm not void of overthinking. I'm not void of overcomplicating things. I'm not void of saying mean things to myself, but now it doesn't rule me anymore. Now it's not the reason that I stop. It's something that I can recognize, like, oh, hey, there's that thing. I'm doing it. So now I'm better equipped. I have better tools. I have, you know, a more grounded approach to be able to shift out of those things so that I can keep moving towards the thing that I want.
Yeah.
My kids laugh at me because I tell them all the time, like in their anxiety or their emotion, I'm like, your brain is dumb. You have to understand that. Like, it is going to try and go down the simplest, dumbest, like, spiral that you allow it to. You have to take control of it and rewire it. And they're like, Mom, you use your brain. How is it dumb? I was like, because it is. It's just dumb. You have to tell it what to do. You can't just leave it to its own vices.
It is very much like a puppy, right? Like it is trainable or not. And what you feed it, what you tell it, what you practice with it becomes its norm. And if you're consistently saying negative things and going down the self-doubt route and questioning yourself and overthinking things, like that's what your brain becomes familiar with. And that's what your brain thinks is the safest route for you. And so that's why the mind is it is the most underrated tool that we have. And it's the most moldable for good and for bad. And so we have to be very conscious about the things that we're saying and thinking. And then more importantly, is that then being tied to an emotion, right? Because if we start thinking things, then we start feeling things. And when our body gets involved, now we've got a little bit of a recipe for like shit, right? Like there's a mind-body connection, right? And so if there's an emotion attached to this, then it's fueling our brain, and then our brain is fueling our body, and we get caught in cycles. And that's where most people end up, is in a cycle that feels really difficult to get out of.
I always say you don't come out of the womb with all these self-deprecating thoughts, you know, so they are definitely learned behaviors. And I think what you're saying is if you can have that awareness and work on making that shift and replacing it, it's just, I think when you're little and you hear these things, you don't have the ability to decipher, is this true? Is this not true? And you're just so moldable then. So those thoughts, they just are implanted in there. And I think those are the hard ones to get rid of.
Absolutely.
Well, that, and then you think about like when we were growing up, and I'm sure there's an age difference between the three of us, but when we were growing up, we didn't have like the perfect Pinterest mom, aspirations, or the Instagram worthy like you didn't even have that kind of pressure, and we still learn these behaviors. Like it's got to be 100 times worse for the younger generations, where now the unexpected, or not unexpected, but the unachievable expectations are just right in your face constantly. So those thoughts get to be even more. One of the things in the entrepreneur space, the buzzword of like imposter syndrome. Everybody has imposter syndrome. And it's like, no, you just have doubt. You have doubt in yourself. Like it's not, but they want to make it like it's something brand new. But yeah.
Yeah, well, it's again, if you think about it on even like a deeper level, when we start thinking about imposter syndrome, we start talking about it, we start reading about it, we kind of start believing it, right? And I'm not saying that you're not doubting yourself, but I'm saying you're starting to now form beliefs around an identity that I am that person. And so if you start believing that you're an imposter or recognizing yourself within this, then you start associating with it. Then you start making decisions based off of it. You know what I mean? So you have to be really careful. Like, I think it's great to find comfort and relatability within terms or feelings, right? But it's a really kind of slippery slope, because don't go so far that you become then attached to it, and then that becomes the reason why you can't. If you see that and you're like, oh, I can see how that's showing up in my life, that's not the conscious choice that I want to make anymore. Now let me go in a different direction. That can be really healthy.
That's that mix between having validation, like, oh, that's what's going on with me, versus like, this is who I am.
Correct.
So I have anxiety, I'm dealing with anxiety, or I'm an anxious person, or
Correct.
Making that your identity. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think a lot of people fall into that vulnerability where everybody wants a title for something instead of going, I'm just human. Like these are just human behaviors. I've seen people where they drank 3 times a week, and all of a sudden, like they wanted to be a recovering alcoholic, but like they drank for 3 times a week for 2 months. Like they weren't, you know what I mean? But they felt like they needed that identity, and it had to be part of who they were, or, just different things and I think, again, a lot of that comes from the online, like that hero story. Everybody needed a hero story, so they had to dramatize and take on these identities that weren't 100% like authentic. And I don't know, everybody with titles these days.
So do you try to help people just gain awareness of their own situation? And like, yeah, what's your method?
Yeah, my method, I actually have a bit of a process I'd love to share with you if you're open to that I share with my clients. So I didn't realize I was developing a method until after the fact, and then I'm a sucker for like dissecting things that work and don't work to just get to know it and understand it better. And what I realized was through my own process, through my own challenges, through my own business pivots, I wanted to know what I was doing that was making it better, right? Because if I can quantify that, then maybe I can teach that. And if I can teach that, I can help impact other people. So I developed something called the Power Back process. It's an acronym, AURA, Aura.
Oh, okay.
Which is all about getting back into your own energy, right? So if you're caught in a cycle of overthinking, you're spiraling, you're worrying, you're doubting, right? You're in that thing. This is the time where you want to use this method to break that cycle. So, because what happens if we don't, it grows, right? I mean, I think we've all experienced that. It's like a wildfire. One spark and the whole thing's going.
Right.
This interrupts that process. Okay. So the acronym is AURA. The very first one is A, which is awareness. We can't do anything. We can't make any changes if we're not even aware of the thing in the first place. And awareness often looks like recognizing the thoughts, recognizing your body, feeling, right? Like feeling gets a really bad rap. It's such a necessary human experience.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is like, oh, I have tightness in my chest. Oh, I'm thinking about 30 things at once. Oh, I'm multitasking, right? Like just coming back into your conscious body and recognizing what's going on.
Mm.
Because when you notice it, then we can consciously do something to change it. Okay. Once you kind of catch yourself in these moments, then you can go to you, which is to unpack it. This is just getting to know it, right? Getting to know yourself, getting to know what's going on, and getting really curious. I love curiosity because it diffuses the bigness of stuff and takes you out of this very subjective place and puts you in a place of wonder and interest and curiosity and creativity, right? And so what I mean by this is like, oh, I wonder why I'm feeling anxious. Oh, I wonder what's going on in here. What is my body trying to say to me? Oh, I wonder what did I do with my schedule? Did I maybe overpack it, right? You're not saying things like, oh, you did this again, and oh, you did, right? Because of our initial reaction to ourselves after we recognize we're doing something is then to shame ourselves for doing the thing.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, we're not doing that. We're breaking that cycle. We're just getting curious about it. This again starts to diffuse this bigness and put you back in the driver's seat of yourself. Then you can go to R, which is to reframe it. This is where you get to reimagine what's really true and possible. What is really happening in this moment? What can you do instead? Right? So reframing might be like, oh, I've built awareness, like I'm feeling anxious, right? My mind's going 100 miles an hour. I'm feeling tightness in my chest. Got it. Let me get curious about this. I've taken on too many things today. I'm trying to multitask and I've overcommitted. Got it. So let me reframe this. What's really possible instead? I can redelegate something. I don't have to do this today. I've created deadlines in my mind that don't really exist. I could make a phone call and ask for some more time, right? Like this is getting back in touch with like the reality of things, okay? That then allows you to go to A, which is to take aligned action. This is where you're taking action that supports the desire, the belief, the new groundedness that you have. You're moving in that direction instead of spiraling in the way that you once would. So this process, gosh, I use it still to this day, like sometimes a couple of times a day. I've taught it thousands of times, and it helps you to break that cycle of the bigness and the overthinking in your mind, and it helps you to move towards the thing that you want instead of continuing in that cycle of the thing that you're so desperately trying to get out of.
Yeah. And I think it's so helpful to have a process where people can, because most people want to change what's not working for them because it's causing them discomfort. And if they don't know how, it does become part of their identity. And so by giving people that process, it's like, okay, it's workable, it's doable. You probably see people's confidence shift right away when they're like, oh, there's a process. Okay, I like it.
Absolutely. What a gal that I recently taught it to messaged me and she's like, Laura, I've done 10 years of therapy and nothing has been such a tangible way for me to like regroup in the moment as this process. And I think that speaks volumes because I'm a huge advocate for therapy. I'm not pushing against that. I've done it. I continue to do it. It's fantastic, a fantastic resource. But sometimes we just need something different, right? You can hear a lot of things. You can get a lot of support in a lot of different ways, but sometimes you just need a technique that works with you and your own method and your own personality and your own life in a way that you've not yet been taught. So I'm telling you, if you use it, it will change things for you.
Well, and it seems actionable too. Like you could be sitting at your desk and go, okay, and kind of go through the steps as opposed to, and I am all for therapy as well. I think everybody needs it, and especially the ones whose family won't go. But some of those tasks are a lot more deep rooted, I would say. Tammy, you could let me know, but they're more deep rooted, like a process of like journaling or, finding the root where your process seems to be like, in the moment, let's knock these out and go through this to come to a solution promptly, I guess, throughout your
Absolutely.
day.
You can do it at your desk. You can do it standing in the grocery line.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it when you're standing at a concert and you're starting to think about something, right? Like it's a tool that you can use in the moment. And you don't need to go anywhere. You don't need to buy anything. There's nothing special to do other than giving yourself permission to take back control in that moment. And that's what it boils down to. And you can use it over and over again. It's not a one-time use tool. You know, like I said, sometimes I use it dozens of times a day. Sometimes I go a couple of weeks and I don't need to use it. But the point is to use it, right? If you want to break the cycle, you have to actively do something different.
Right. And probably depending on the situation, you might have people who spend different amounts of time in different stages. Like the unpacking it could bring on a ton of emotional trauma sometimes.
Yeah.
So yeah, you never know. Once you're right, you can't change something if you're not aware of it, because why would you change something if you don't think you're doing anything wrong? So
Yes.
awareness is key, but yeah, that unpacking it. I wonder how many people do you find get stuck in that? Like, holy cow, this is so much to unpack. Like, I'm out. Let me just sweep that back under the rug.
Well, I mean, that's the natural human tendency, right? Is to avoid the discomfort. But the ones that go on to make the lasting change, the fulfilling change, they lean into that discomfort.
Yeah.
You know,
you have
and unpack.
Right.
You have to. It's the only way through. And unpacking doesn't always have to be a deep dive, right? Sometimes it's surface level. Sometimes it's, you know, in a moment or in a situation. And sometimes it does crack open some stuff. But if it's coming up, it's ready to be talked about and healed, right? We can't heal what we won't feel. So allowing yourself to go down that path, and okay, again, looking at it through the lens of curiosity, what is my body and my mind trying to tell me right now? What's coming up for me? What is ready to be released? And the best way that I can do that is to lean into it.
So back to the awareness. So you're constantly sprinkling the awareness throughout the process so that you're recognizing what's coming up for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the unpacking stage, I mean, I would think that part of the process is also staying focused on like what you're aware of, so that you're not unpacking your lifetime of shit based on those two tasks that you're overwhelmed with or stuck with. I know that would be a practicing factor for me of like, don't go down the rabbit hole. Like, just let's deal with these two things that I'm struggling with today.
That's the overthinking.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you know, taking a chip at it, right? Especially if you feel like, or people that are very new to this process or have not done a lot of inner work yet, it can sometimes feel a little bit daunting to like go there, right? But again, it's the opportunity to kind of start chipping away at, and to even just dabble with getting to know your emotions and what's coming up for you in the moment, and that you don't have to go down the deep rabbit hole, because let's be honest, standing in the grocery line is probably not the ideal time to unpack your childhood trauma, right?
Put it away, tuck it in.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, what's happening right now? Let me recognize what triggered this. Let me recognize what I'm feeling right now. And maybe that's a time where you do grab your phone in the notes app and you jot down what you're thinking, or you grab a piece of paper and you write it down, so that when you're home or in a space where you feel comfortable, then you can explore it further.
Yeah. Yeah, you never know what's going to pop up. So
listen, I've been on a personal development journey, I swear to you, since the day that I was born. I have been teaching this for 10 years. It still surprises me, you know, and I'm like, wow, I thought I dealt with this. And in a lot of cases, in a lot of ways, I have, but it's like an onion. There are layers to it, right? There are pieces, and working
makes you cry sometimes.
It's absolutely. Listen, I was crying yesterday. Like I am not void of this stuff, but it's interesting because it's not the same, right? So what used to get me down and out, it's not as hard or as deep or as long as it was in the beginning. Healing is an interesting journey. And in the beginning, it can feel really big and daunting and super messy. As you go through it, though, it's like you're peeling off layers of you, that this heavy armor that you've been carrying your whole life, and you're sitting pieces of that down, and so it gets lighter, it gets easier, so that when it does pop up, it's like, okay, well, there's another piece to that I thought I healed. It's never going to fully go away. And I think that's empowering and sometimes discouraging all in the same sentence. But the reality behind it is it's not going to go away because it's part of your life experience, but it's going to get easier. It will get lighter and you'll be able to move through it faster because you've put down all this armor before.
Well, that's like anxiety. Once you learn coping skill, like it's never going to go away, but once you learn the coping skills, it does get easier. It sounds very similar. Would this same process work? Because I don't know that they're the same, but would it work for people who have like racing thoughts? Like those nighttime, like racing thoughts where they're not anything in particular, but they're just like this overwhelming, every terrible, horrible fear, whatever comes to you. Would a process like this maybe help? Or like, that's just so many things.
I mean, it's a lot of headspace, right? It's like the Wild West up there. It gets kind of gnarly. It absolutely can work, especially if you've harnessed your ability to catch it. Okay, so that's the key. Is like when you're already like 10 miles into those thoughts, will this process work? It could. Probably not going to be the best solution. I'll give you another option here in a second. But if you get really, really strong at catching it early, this process absolutely will nip that shit right in the butt, right? Like it will stop it from spiraling so big. If you're already like knee deep in it though, I know this feeling all too well. Hands down, the best thing you got to do is move. You cannot think your way out of a funk. You cannot think your way out of overthinking. You'll just add fuel to the fire and it gets bigger and it gets hairier, right? So moving. And I know that's really inconvenient at like 2:00 in the morning when everything's quiet and you can't really do a lot of stuff. But if you can get up and move, like taking a walk, shaking your body, right? Getting somatic practices in there. Sometimes movement is also like writing things down, saying things out loud. So instead of laying there thinking about it, like I want you to start saying that stuff out loud, right? Any kind of movement will start to diffuse that. So if you're knee deep in it and you're like, what do I do in that case? Move something, because that will immediately start to like put down the fire a little bit.
Maybe like even just a muscle tension relaxation technique. I used to do this with my kids and I would put them to sleep immediately, and I do it with myself too. But you take your toes and you take an inhale and you squish up your toes and you exhale and release it, and then your calf muscles and then your quads and your butt and your stomach and your chest and your arms, and you just move all the way up and tensing and relaxing, and then but adding the breath in there as well. And then your whole body, inhale, tense up, and then exhale and relax. And I wonder if something like that is enough to get out of your brain.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's movement, right? That's intentional movement. You're activating your body at this point.
Right.
And that's great to do in the middle of the night. Those breathing techniques and exercises are great to do in the middle of the night, right? The whole point is you're interrupting your brain. Now you're focused on your body. Now you're focused on like the movement and how that feels. And it takes the attention away from the brain that wants the, center stage, and it moves it to the body, which helps to calm it down.
Yeah. Even just, I've said like, Tammy, stop out loud. Tammy, stop. And my brain,
I've done that a lot.
My brain's like, oh, okay, all right, hey.
Yeah.
That's what I told my kids. I'm like, say stop out loud. Like literally tell yourself to stop thinking about that. But my husband, he gets so frustrated with me because when we first started dating, I always fell asleep with the TV on. And he's like, One point, he's like, Desiree, I'm going to put a hole through that TV. I cannot deal with the light, the sound, whatever.
Right.
So then I bought like a side bed thing. It goes under the mattress and it holds my tablet. So I watch that with earbuds so it doesn't bother him. And he's like, that's so terrible for you, like to go to sleep. You're up till 2 a.m, the blue light, whatever. I'm like, I can't be left with these thoughts. I have to watch something. Because if I sit there and just lay there and try to go to sleep, every terrible possible thing that's never going to happen that I think could possibly happen is going through my brain. I'm like, I can't do it. I need to fall asleep to something that has occupied my brain or else I'm never sleeping. It's terrible.
We all have individual techniques, right? And if that works for you and it's not taking away from your ability to fall asleep or your quality of life, then
marriage.
do what works for you. Yeah, or your marriage, your connection, yourself, right? If it's adding value and it's helping you, then keep doing it. If it's not, I might ask, what is in there that needs to be unpacked on a deeper level? Because those racing thoughts are likely trying to tell you something. So I'll just slide that across the table for food for thought.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to know. I've done plenty of therapy and they're crazy thoughts too. It's not like, I don't know. It's not like, just as an example, like I'll start to doze off and then I have this weird like vision, like I'm not fully asleep, so it's not a dream, but like this weird vision that my kid jumps off of a hill and there's nothing below it, you know, like craziness. And it's like, I have to replay that 30 times to figure out how I'm going to prevent that from happening. And the first 5 times I might have missed something, did something wrong, and it still happens. And I literally have to work it out in my head how to make it not happen. Like it's insanity. But I'm like, I don't know what that's attached to. Like I have no idea. So if I knew, I would totally be undigging it to make it go away. But I have
understandable.
No idea.
The brain, it's a creative place, and for the great, and sometimes for stuff like that where it's like, why are we doing this right now?
Well, control, like those are, your anxiety is all about not having control over your emotions or your situation or your life. So yeah, I think that, you can whittle that down and I think that's kind of what you're promoting, Laura, is like gain control. What do you have control over instead of spinning out about things that you can't control? But getting your awareness, that's what you have control. Right now, how am I feeling? That's where you have control. Unpack it, reframe it, like you're pulling back all these aspects of control. It sounds like that's what you're helping people with.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. So do you have a particular like age group that you serve, or like what is your ideal audience or customer look like?
I tend to work with women. They are usually in the age range of 35 to 60-ish. Some of them are entrepreneurs. A lot of them are women that are, they're just kind of fed up, right? They're fed up with the way that life has been and they're ready to prioritize themselves maybe for the first time ever, but they're not sure how to do that or feel kind of awkward and need some guidance. So whether it's with business or whether it's personal, the whole goal is to help people own what they actually want and then to be able to shift the mind junk so that they can get it. And that's where I come in.
Do you work with them like weekly, monthly, or is it just depend case by case? Or
yeah, it depends. I have a couple of different programs. I have one-to-one coaching, which is always fantastic. I also have a community where women are coming together, and I'm sharing lessons and audio lessons with them. So it's like, think of it like a podcast married with online courses, but instead of having to sit and watch things, you get to listen to it in your own time. And then everyone comes together for accountability checks, and we do a live Q&A session every month. And it's great for women to come together because, as you know, when we come together, the confidence and the clarity just rise, across the board. So that's always a great first step in, especially if this is a new avenue for you. It's called the Gutsy Collective. And it's women making gutsy decisions to better their lives.
Yeah, that's where it starts. I love the community aspect as well.
Yeah, it's contagious. I'll tell you, the energy is contagious, and they feed off of one another and they support one another. And then I'm pouring like knowledge and wisdom and tools and techniques into them, and it just, it's goodness all around.
That's fantastic. Good. Well, and you're an author too, right?
I like to call myself an author in the making.
Okay.
So while I don't officially have a book, there are several books in me. But I am an author every day. I am writing and putting out content every single day of my life. So it's a tool that I love. It's a technique that allows me to impact people in a way that feels really great, and I'm excited to pour that into a book.
I was gonna say, yeah, get that stuff on paper.
Yes.
It's your
Heaven knows
it's your Gutsy collection.
Yes, I am not lacking in content. That is for sure.
Yeah. Very cool.
So we have your website, your Facebook, your TikTok, your Instagram, and your LinkedIn. So all the ways that people can connect with you and follow you, those will all be listed in the description.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on here today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
And for sharing your technique.
Absolutely. Anytime that I have an opportunity to help better women's lives, you can sign me up. So
Awesome.
happy to be here.
Cool.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you, Laura.